Milling Through History presents Dracula. When we think of the name vampire, almost immediately the name Count Dracula comes up into mind. The story of the famous immortal vampire who sucks the blood of the living in order to sustain his own life is one which has captured the imagination of many generations for well over 100 years. However, this cult classic novel has a different story all of its own, completely outside the tale in which it tells. Invasion literature was very popular in Victorian England during the 1880s and 1890s. Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, wrote sensational novels to support his income as a business manager for the Lyceum Theatre in London. After spending 7 years studying European folklore, Stoker would go ahead and use Dracula as the basis of his next novel. In order to give context to this particular character, it is generally believed that he was inspired by that of Vlad Tepes, also referred to as Vlad Dracula. Vampire novels, though, were not exactly considered a new concept. In fact, the first vampire novel itself was written in 1794. However, for Stoker, the name Dracula was a last-minute addition. He had been going with other names, but in seeing that the reputation of Vlad Tepes certainly helped to make his character seem a little bit more intimidating, he switched it to Dracula. But in order to go ahead and give more life to this particular character, he would look upon his friend, Sir Henry Irving, as being the inspiration for many of Dracula's own characteristics in his mannerism and the way in which he would move about in order to create the character as being far more lifelike. On May the 26th, 1897, Dracula was published for the reading audience of England and the world. Ironically enough, though, in the creation of this book, Bram Stoker did not fill out all of his copyright information correctly when it came to the publication of the book in the United States. As a result of this, Dracula effectively became part of the public domain, and for Hollywood filmmakers wanting to go ahead and convert this book into a movie, they had a much easier time in being able to do this. Ironically enough, though, when the book was published, it was not an immediate bestseller. In fact, while critics were very positive in their reviews and thought Dracula was a far superior novel to those of Mary Shelley and Edgar Allan Poe, most of Victorian society only viewed Dracula as that of an adventure story. As such, Bram Stoker was relatively broke by the time he passed away. It would not be until the 1920s that F.W. Murnau's film NOSFERATU would go ahead and begin to bring the story of Dracula back into the public light. The reason for this is that Bram Stoker's widow would sue the German producer for creating a film off of the novel without the family's permission. A stage adaptation of the film NOSFERATU would be created, and it would begin in England for 3 years before traveling to the United States. And in doing so, the United States would give to Dracula its most enduring legacy, that of Bela Lugosi, who would play the role of the vampire on stage. And in 1931, Hollywood would have Bela Lugosi reprise the role of Dracula, and once it had hit the screen, the book itself would never find itself out of print ever again. Be sure to click like, share, and subscribe for future episodes of Milling Through History, and leave comments below for future episode ideas. And be sure to take a look at our suggested reading page.